Similarly to Saint Dominic, Saint Etienne has these huge white spiral staircases that bring your eye to the front of the church, and it also has this beautiful stained glass in the background. And that was really interesting to me because it brings your eye to the altar, and it brings the church all together. And going along with the theme of color, Saint Germain and Saint Chapelle, they all have these huge, colorful ceilings with blue and gold and red accents that really show the wealth and the power of the time they were built. And they one is much older than the other. Saint Chapelle was made much later, but Saint Chapelle was also known for its stained glass. So that's interesting to me, that even though these two buildings were built so far apart, they still have the same sort of architecture and the same colors. And they both have huge crosses in the front, which bring your eye also to the front of the church. Saint Chapelle now is more of a touristy attraction, and it's not used for mass or anything like that anymore, unless it's on special occasions. So that goes on to my next topic of the uses of churches now. So, like I said, a lot of the churches are tourist attractions now, and mass isn't held there just because so many people want to visit, and it's kind of impossible to have religious activities along with just tourist activities. So Saint Chapelle, Mont Saint Michel, Saint Eustache, and Saint Germain, they're all used for tourist attractions and activities outside of just mass and other religious activities. So what they do is they host concerts and movies and children's activities, artists who want to go there and display their work, things like that. Whereas the other churches that I've been to were strictly just for religious activities. Like Sacre-Cœur was holding a service while we were there on Wednesday, and they hold Mass Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday on time every week. And this is important to the habitual Parisians who attend, because this is their place of worship, even though people want to visit. So the blend between the private sector, the tourist sector, and the religious sector play an important part in the Parisian faith, which I think is interesting because there's not a lot of churches in the United States that have that. And the blending of the interactions is kind of hard on the people of Paris, because they want to worship, but there's people coming in who just want to take pictures and are talking. So that plays into the aesthetic of the community and the spirituality of Paris with these churches. The places that I felt were most I don't know, just kind of an easy place to pray, a quiet place, were La Madeleine and Saint Sulpice and Saint Thomas, which is where our school is at ICP. They were really quiet, and there were only people in there praying. There weren't really a lot of tourists walking around and talking. Everyone was in there praying. And I think that's kind of important to going back to the roots of the church and why the church was there in the first place. It's filled with people who want to pray and be around the Lord and be in a church for what the church was made for. And I think that Parisians have clung to this idea with these smaller churches just to get away from the tourist side of it. And for me, that's important because I like to go into churches and kind of get a feel for them and just say a prayer and take in the building, take in the atmosphere. So I don't know. And the people that I've talked to in Paris, the friends that I've made here, all have said the same thing, where they're all most people here are Catholic and cling to their Catholic roots, and they want to go to a church that's quiet. They don't really want to go to Sacré-Cœur or the other touristy places because they're not going to get as much out of it as they would any other church that's smaller and quiet and more in their community. And another thing that they were talking about was how in the United States, it's kind of not politically correct to ask someone like, hey, like, what do you believe in? Like, what are your views? Whereas here, everyone's really open. Everyone always wears crosses and are okay with talking to people about what they believe in. And I think that that's important. And that also brings back to the point of these churches where everyone can come together in this huge place that was built for religious activities, where whether you're a tourist or someone who just wants to go to church, everyone can come together in one place and feel safe and feel like they can be in that environment, which is important to me. And so I learned a lot on this trip, just about how you don't have to be in a super quiet place with only 2 or 3 people around and only one minister up front. You can be anywhere and still get the same thing that you would out of praying in a quiet place. So I think that was really important for me to see here, and I think that I learned a lot from this trip.